passionate about what God has intended for us, right? And how far we have fallen from grace, and how far um, we are just in general when it comes to the family unit, y'all. If we keep it a buck and we keep it real, we don't really, many of us don't have that family core and that family unit. We just don't. Um, it's been systematic, in my opinion. It's been by design. It's been in the making, right? It's been something that has been, it started out as a vision. And by the time it's put into manifestation, it's kind of too late for us to figure out what's going on, or to make a difference at that point, right? So, in the midst of saying all of that, um, we are in a time where our children are being totally put in a position to be attacked. Um, there's an agenda in place. There's a lot that's going on. It's not a secret. And if it was at one point, I don't think it is anymore. And the point of the matter is that a lot of us are procreating and we're growing families, and everything looks so uncertain and so unsure for what's to come. And I had this video was sent to me, and I haven't seen it because I feel like if I watch it, then I won't do a reaction on it, or I won't, I'll choose something else. But because I feel this is an important topic and it's something that needs to be said and shared, I don't have an issue with being totally transparent, authentic for the first time around, and we'll be seeing this together collectively. But if we don't fight for our children, then who will? Who will? So, the topic of this live can go in a few different directions, but we're going to start off with I feel like there's a disconnect in the maternal and in the motherly relationship in regards to bearing life and having a connection with that life. It is designed originally, in the original, just all you have to do is look at the instinctual aspect of it, right? And no matter what species reproduces and procreates, that mother has an involuntary connection with that offspring that they bear life to. And having been blessed enough to bear life to my children, right? I can speak on this and speak from my experience and say to you that the connection, when I say involuntary, I do not mean that in a derogatory fashion. I mean that in the way that it just is what it is. When something grows, formulates, and evolves inside of you into an entire entity, into an entire being with everything all encompassing, you're going to have naturally a connection with that ball of energy. That's just automatic. And I just cannot relate, but the story is becoming more and more common day by day, with our children being victims, and their lives are being taken from them super early, to the point where someone like me that has lived some life, I sit back and I say, well, why were they born? And at the very least, with the resolution to that answer that is given to me, the very least, we can spread awareness. We can use them to spread the word so their lives don't go in vain, right? And this is not going to resonate with everybody. Everybody ain't going to have, especially in the sector that I'm in, they're not going to, some people are just not, and that's fine. But for the ones that it does resonate with, for those that may have children, that may have grandchildren, and you understand as a grandparent, the magnitude of your role and the blessing that it provides for that grandchild. For those that have nieces and nephews that maybe don't have children, but that allows them the ability to be able to nurture other people's children, right? Children are our future. And that's just, it sounds cliche, but that's what it is. And we're just at that point where we need to sometimes do our part, whatever that looks like to us, to advocate for our children, because if we don't, they're not going to know how to advocate for themselves. And that's real talk. So I'm going to go ahead and start this video. Like I said, this is the first time that I've seen it, and this is going to be an authentic reaction. And we're just going to go from here and pray ourselves through it. Hold on, y'all.
To the edge of death.
He's standing over Robert for about 3-4 seconds, and that's when 2 shots went off. And Robert didn't move at all.
By assault, I punched her. I have put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness.
These are some of the faces of the most notorious and dangerous women who ended up in prison.
Hold on. Like I said, this is my first time going through this too, but words matter. And I want to see the picture.
To see how these women reacted to their sentence.
Robert didn't move at all.
By assault, I punched her. I have put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness.
These are some of the...
Okay, so let's look at this for a second before we even get off into what everything, is being said and how this is going to be specific to each individual in their situation. But if you look at all these pictures, the first thing that strikes me personally are their eyes. I was always taught that the eyes are the mirror of your soul. And without it being explained to me and just that being said alone, I sit back and when I look at people's eyes, a lot of times the eyes tell a story that the mouth doesn't. And when it talks about being the mirror of your soul, I totally agree with that. And looking at these mothers here, there's a mixture of different messages that they're sending that I see in their eyes. But one thing that is for certain, that's unanimous amongst them all, is that there's something missing and there's a disconnect. So looking through their eyes for me, it's like, okay, that's telling me the story that we haven't heard yet, right? So let's continue.
The faces of the most notorious and dangerous women who ended up in prison. Let's go to the courtroom to see how these women reacted to their sentences. This case has one of the most dangerous black women you may ever hear of because she intentionally murdered 2 of her children, and she was without remorse all through her trial in court. Let's take a seat at the Wayne County Court to see how it went down. Mitchell Blair stood remorseless and adamant beside her lawyer as she requested a life sentence without parole from the judge in the Wayne County courtroom. After everything, Mitchell pleads guilty to all the charges alleged against her.
Now, the information I have before me is that you want to plead guilty to count 2, the premeditated murder of Stony Blair,
Yes.
and count 3, the felony murder of Stephen Berry.
Yes.
Okay. Am I correct that you want to plead guilty to those counts?
Yes.
Michelle Blair's horrific story began in August 2012 when she came back home to find her youngest son.
I'm already disturbed. My whole spirit over here is doing flips. So I stopped it here because, again, it's the eyes that tell me the story. And whatever your mouth tells you, your body is either going, your mannerisms, the psychology, your body language, either it's going to solidify what your mouth is saying or it's going to contradict what your mouth is saying. Either way, that's going to tell you a story. It's going to tell you the true story. And if you are in tune or you are checking for what the soul is saying, which is through the eyes, as we've been saying, and put that over and take priority over what the mouth is saying, you will have a better opportunity of hitting the true intended intention of that individual than anything else, right? You just got to look for the truth markers, in my opinion. Okay, so let's continue.
Matthew, stimulating himself with a doll. When she asked why he was engaging in such a gross act, he confessed that his older brother Stephen had been sexually abusing him. Being a victim of sexual assault herself, Mitchell was enraged and immediately called in Stephen for questioning. While interrogating him, she lost her cool and beat him to death. To make his punishment worse, she poured hot water on his private organs. Once she confirmed he was dead, she packed his body and stuffed it in her deep freezer.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack here, right? So this mother, she unalived her 2 children. There's generational trauma that has never been treated, that has never been probably even reiterated or exposed to a large degree until it was too late. And then, of course, people want to make you a study. They want to pry. They want to try to figure some things out. Now you become a priority where I feel like a lot of these women and these mothers, they cry out for help, but we have a lack of people that are listening. So when it comes to these mothers, like I said, there's a disconnect that happens, and I think it runs a lot deeper than what is on the surface, but we have to scratch the surface before we can go any deeper, right? So let's continue.
9 months later, Mitchell discovered that her older daughter, Stony, was also abusing Matthew. So she gave her the same treatment she gave Stephen, but in a different way. Michelle beat and starved Stony until she died. Then, this remorseless mum of 4 stuffed Stony's body inside the same freezer where she had put Stephen's dead body 9 months earlier.
I punched her. I have put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness. I threw hot water on her, scalding hot water from the faucet.
Did you hit her in the head with them?
Yes, I hit her in her head multiple times, over and over.
These were all done in May 2013. However, authorities only found out when Mitchell was evicted from her home because she couldn't pay her rent in 2015. Perhaps the most worrying thing about Mitchell Blair is the nonchalant attitude and the lack of remorse she showed while sharing her own account of why she murdered her kids. During the court proceeding, she blamed the fathers of the children for not showing up and insisted that killing them was the right thing to do.
And they want to talk about how they love my daughters. Now they want to be front and center, but they was always in the background. They never did anything for them, never showed up to my door, not once.
She was eventually sentenced by Judge Dana Hathaway to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow. So, okay, listen. She had evidently, based off of what we just saw, she has 2 sons, a son and a daughter from 2 different fathers. And they, as she stated, they seem to be not present until they were required to be in court and something happened. And so it seems as if whatever disconnect that may preempted all of this, it didn't help when the ish hit the fan, and now the fathers are there and she's on the hot seat, right? So with that being said, when there's such a disconnect or an imbalance in the home, it becomes an issue when it comes to the children. And our children, when you have children, I was talking to Michelle today, and shout out to Michelle Thoughts. When we were speaking, I just said, when it comes to the children, once you have children and you bear life, and as the mother, it is your responsibility to make that decision. Once you make that decision, you follow through with it. Guess what? That's a calling. It's a calling, period, right? But, you have people that have children for different reasons outside of what the original intent, in my opinion, has been. Children. We have to prioritize our children. If you make the decision and take the responsibility to procreate, to go through the actions of creating an entire separate life outside of your own, because outside of that 9 or 10th month gestation period, there's a whole nother entity that once that life enters into this realm, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. So you've gone through almost a year of being able to make a conscious decision as a woman, as a mother, as a maternal being, that this is what I choose to do. Well, guess what? You've had enough time. And if you make that decision to procreate and bring life into this realm, then you are responsible for it. Period. End of story. And when you have created that calling in your life, you've created that calling. And when I tell you that there's nothing you can do about that, there's nothing you can do about it at that point, but accept it and do what is required of you as a parent, as a person, as a being that is responsible for somebody else until they're able to be responsible for thyself. And we got people out here using mental illness as an excuse when they fall short and something detrimental happens, or their dirt is brought out the carpet because they've been doing this for so long with possibly multiple different children. But by the time all of this surfaces and comes to pass, you're burying one or more of them. This is bullshit. When are we going to stop making excuses? If you make the intentional decision to procreate and bring children into this world, you have created your path. You only get one shot at raising kids. They grow up fast. And especially in this era where we have technology, where the age of information, they come out understanding things that us old heads still ain't grasped yet. And therefore there's a disconnect. Why? Because nobody trusts nobody. The children aren't even trusting their parents because their parents are neglecting them, and they didn't ask to be here. They didn't ask to be brought here. It infuriates me. You can't talk to me as a woman, as a maternal being, and as a mother if you aren't the primary influence in the upbringing and the rearing of life that you brought, procreated, and manifested by choice, because it took you 10 months to do it. You can't talk to me about neglecting a child in any fashion because of what it requires to bring a child into this world. You got a year almost to reflect and to come to terms with what this is going to require of me. But we have so many narcissistic people, male, female, old, young, middle age, in their right minds, not in their right minds. Narcissism is a cultural brand in this country. And so it's promoted, and we don't even define it as being narcissism until it hits home. Right? So it saddens me to see we're just going to get past the point. I'm sorry, or stop at the point where the parents harm the children. But prior to that, it's like, where is the bond? Good, bad, indifferent, down the middle. Where is the bond between the parents and the children? Where has that gone? And the reality of the situation that is very difficult, and I teeter-totter with it personally, that comes to mind is that the times that we are living in, right? And where we are in the Bible, where we are in the Word. Oh no, y'all, my bad. I got all kinds of stuff going on over here, my bad. We're living in a time where it's going with the territory that our children are being targeted for many reasons. They're inexperienced, they're young, they haven't lived enough life in this realm yet, right? And then we have a lot of the parents that are bringing these children into the world for the wrong reasons. Whether it's for a paycheck, for a steady income because you don't want to work. You're using the system to benefit you. And you think it's going to benefit the child. But that depends on you. Right? There's a lot going on that is not in the favor of our children. And if you are blessed enough to be a parent at this point in time and in the era that we live in, your calling is greater than you understand or realize. Especially from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, things were totally different than they are now. We went from one administration to another administration. And we went from being concerned about how the message was being delivered and how curtain rude this person was, to now we are fighting battles that we didn't even see coming as a collective, right? So I need for us to really start reprioritizing what's really important. What really garners and should be garnering our attention, whether we birthed these children or we didn't, we influence somebody's children. And sometimes the biggest influences come from those that are not blood. But we're living in a time where we don't know who to trust because our discernment is not on point, because we don't take the time to nurture a relationship with who we consider our God. We don't spend enough spiritual time and we don't exercise our spiritual muscles. And we are in a spiritual war. We are in a war. We're talking about our children. We're talking about the future generation, right? And that What we're dealing with at this point is not a physical or tangible war. It is a spiritual war. And if you are not spiritually connected and armed, you're at a disadvantage. And so are your children, right? Y'all, I appreciate you. Let's see. Yes. Good night.